Have you ever felt the burning jab of a honeybee sting? It's awful, like an ember embedded in your skin. The site becomes inflamed, throbs for hours, and balloons into a red lump for days. But while you suffer discomfort, the bee pays a far steeper price. It dies shortly after. Why would an organism evolve a defense tactic that guarantees its own demise? It seems counterintuitive at first, but once we explore the intricate science behind this self-sacrifice, a fascinating strategy unfolds. So gear up mentally and physically. We're diving into the hidden truths of bee stings, and it's more than skin deep. Most people don't realize this, but if a bee has ever stung you, the odds are that you triggered it. Bees typically avoid conflict unless provoked by sudden motions, proximity to their hive, or accidental contact. When out gathering nectar and pollen, they tend to ignore humans unless they're handled roughly or stepped on. You might have heard that all bees perish after stinging, but that's only true for honeybees. While many bee species can retract their stingers, the honeybee's anatomy tells a different story. Its stinger is made of dual barbed lancets, which act like microhooks, locking into the skin. Once inserted, the honeybee attempts to detach, but the barbs resist. As it struggles to fly away, the rear of its body is torn apart, including digestive tissues, neural strands, and muscle fibers. The biological trauma is lethal, akin to an insect version of evisceration. Ironically, the bee's stinger evolved not for human flesh, but as a deterrent against predators with exoskeletons or soft arthropods. When honeybees sting other insects, the lancets usually slip back out cleanly. The difference lies in dermal density and collagenous texture. Mammalian skin is fibrous and thick, ideal for the barbs to lodge into. This misfit is what dooms the bee, despite its instincts having evolved for survival. So what exactly happens to your body when this miniature syringe pierces your skin? The honeybee releases a compound known as melittin, the dominant peptide in bee venom. Melittin comprises about 50% of the venom's dry weight and triggers intense pain by stimulating sensory neurons. This toxin also activates mast cells, which release histamine and increase vascular permeability, causing swelling and redness. Biologically speaking, the venom acts like a warning signal to the body's immune system, a biochemical fire alarm. Because bee venom is water-soluble, it disperses quickly through the interstitial fluids. Given that roughly 60% of the human body is composed of water, melittin travels with alarming efficiency. From a neurological perspective, the sting engages pain receptors called nociceptors, sending rapid-fire distress signals to the brain. This is part of the body's built-in evolutionary safeguard. Pain makes you remember and avoid danger. If you've ever experienced throbbing for hours after a sting, it's not just irritation, it's a full-blown immunological cascade. If you're unlucky enough to be stung, extracting the stinger immediately is crucial. The stinger often continues to pulsate thanks to autonomous muscle contractions, pumping melittin into your tissue like a tiny venom dispenser. Delaying its removal means more toxin gets delivered, worsening your immune response. People who leave it embedded often suffer prolonged inflammation and more severe itching. One particularly painful case involved a man stung on the tongue, not only excruciating but dangerous due to swelling that could restrict breathing. Physiologically, this kind of sting is hazardous due to the proximity to airway pathways and dense nerve endings in the tongue. If that doesn't make you respect bees more, or at least their stings, I don't know what will. If the idea of bee stings terrifies you, you might be relieved or stunned to know many bees can't sting at all. In fact, male bees across all species are born stingless. That's not an evolutionary glitch, it's because their stingers are modified ovipositors, a reproductive organ that only females possess. Additionally, entire lineages of bees, like the Andrenidae, have vestigial or functionally useless stingers. And then there's the Meliponini tribe, commonly known as stingless bees. These creatures reside predominantly in tropical and subtropical ecosystems, spanning regions of Brazil, Australia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. In these regions, it's not uncommon to find colonies composed of tens of thousands, often upwards of 80,000, buzzing workers. But if they can't sting, how do they defend their hives? Biologically, stingless bees have evolved an alternative: a tenacious bite powered by mandibular strength and a chemical bite secretory mechanism. Much like ants, Their bites often contain minor irritants, and their behavioral defense includes clinging to attackers, sometimes until death. This shows an alternative evolutionary adaptation. Even without venom, these bees exhibit protective altruism through self-sacrifice. Culturally, especially in Brazilian communities, these docile insects have even been domesticated. People keep them in simple wooden boxes, not for companionship, but for low-yield, medicinally valuable honey that is thinner, tangier, and antimicrobial. Due to their gentle disposition and low maintenance, stingless bees are even suggested as alternative pets. No barking, no walks, no excrement. Only buzz and benefits. What drives a bee to sting? It isn't random. It's part chemistry, part instinct, part neurology. Bees don't make emotional decisions. Instead, they rely on chemical signals to interpret threats. Enter pheromones, volatile compounds emitted into the environment to alter behavior or physiology among members of the same species. Alarm pheromones are the most critical in a hive's defense network. Once a bee stings, it emits a sharp-smelling cocktail, dominated by isopentyl acetate, that acts like a biochemical siren. This pheromone stimulates aggression in nearby bees, pushing them toward a collective defensive state. According to a 2021 study by biologists from the universities of Innsbruck and Konstanz, bees possess dual internal thresholds. One determines when the pheromone concentration is high enough to initiate a sting response, and the second signals when it's safe to stop. Think of it as an internal chemical thermostat regulating violence. This model aligns with psychological principles of swarm intelligence, where individual organisms behave in simple ways, but together they form complex adaptive systems. Each bee doesn't think, "Should I sting?" It reacts to a pheromone gradient that dictates communal action. This system minimizes individual cognitive load while maximizing hive survival. This isn't just smart, it's evolutionary genius. But what happens when evolution gets aggressive? Back in 1956, Brazilian researchers imported African honeybee queens to crossbreed with European bees, hoping to create a more tropically adapted pollinator. Unfortunately, 26 queens escaped, and the hybrid species that resulted, now known as Africanized bees, began to dominate. These bees are smaller, but far more territorial and extremely sensitive to perceived threats. Unlike their calmer cousins, Africanized bees will pursue intruders for over 400 meters, responding to minor vibrations or noise. The danger isn't in the venom's potency, it's the massive attack response. Victims often receive tenfold the number of stings compared to European bees. Biologically, Africanized bees possess higher metabolic rates and enhanced pheromone sensitivity, making them quicker to mobilize and more responsive. Swarm sizes have been recorded in the hundreds of thousands, which turns what would be a minor sting into a deadly barrage. Statistically, over 1,000 human fatalities have been linked to these hybrids. For perspective, the average adult can survive about 10 stings per pound of body weight. That's around 1,000 stings for a healthy adult and about 400 to 500 for a child. When you're up against a swarm of 800,000, you don't stand a chance unless you escape fast. That's not fear-mongering. That's physics, biology, and math rolled into one lethal probability. Wasps and their wicked ways. Now, bees might have earned their rep for self-sacrifice, but their cousins, wasps, play by an entirely different rulebook. Unlike honeybees, wasps don't lose their stingers after an attack. Why? It comes down to design and intent. A wasp stinger is smooth, lacking the barbs that make a honeybee's sting a one-shot weapon. This gives wasps the ability to strike repeatedly, injecting venom multiple times without dying. From a biochemical standpoint, wasp venom is distinctly different. While bee venom is melittin-dominant and acidic, wasp venom carries a unique mix, including acetylcholine, serotonin, and kinins, designed to cause sharp pain and interfere with nerve signal transmission. The result is a sting that feels sharper, more electric, and longer lasting. One of the most intriguing differences lies in their chemical profile's pH balance. On the pH scale, ranging from 0 extremely acidic to 14 equals highly alkaline, bee stings fall between 4.5 and 5.5, mildly acidic. Think tomato juice or black coffee. In contrast, wasp venom hits closer to 6.8 to 6.9, nudging toward alkaline territory, like saliva or skim milk. Why does that matter? Your body's reaction to stings depends heavily on acid-base interactions at the tissue level. Acidic venom triggers a different set of cellular alarms than alkaline venom. This is why you might react violently to bee venom, but barely flinch at a wasp, or vice versa. Immunologically, an allergy to one doesn't predict sensitivity to the other. They are chemically distinct antigens. So while both leave a mark, wasps do it with more precision, less sacrifice, and unfortunately for us, more frequency. Their nervous system is also wired for aggression. Enhanced dopamine receptors allow rapid, persistent responses to threats. Then we have hornets, the heavyweights of the stinging world. Though technically a subgroup of wasps, hornets have earned a category all their own due to sheer size and sting strength. Growing up to 2 inches long, hornets aren't just intimidating, they deliver venom doses significantly higher per sting. The true pain punch comes from their venom's acetylcholine concentration, a compound that triggers intense nociceptor activation. In simpler terms, they hurt a lot. Some people describe it as being stabbed with a hot nail. From a physiological perspective, acetylcholine floods pain pathways, intensifying every sensory neuron's signal. This is nature's equivalent of turning the pain dial to max. And they aren't immune to problems either. Enter Xenos mutoni, a freaky parasite that invades hornets and literally rewires their behavior. These internal invaders live inside the hornet's body, manipulating its movements. The infected hornet seeks out others like it, so the parasites can mate through their hosts. It's like a real-life version of mind control, courtesy of parasitoid-induced behavioral hijacking. A growing field in neuroparasitology. Males die during this twisted reproductive relay. Once removed, the parasites resemble something out of science fiction. Thin, alien-looking creatures with no external stinger, but massive internal impact. Ironically, they're more dangerous to the hornet than the hornet is to us. Now, while we call them stingers, the correct term is ovipositors, a reproductive organ found in female insects, primarily used for egg placement. In bees, wasps, and hornets, this ovipositor has been co-opted by evolution and transformed into a venomous defense tool. The transformation is so specialized that worker bees no longer use their ovipositors for laying eggs. Instead, they're wired entirely for defense. But the queen? She keeps hers for its original biological mission: reproduction. Her ovipositor is unbarbed, smooth, and optimized for placing eggs deep into comb cells. At her peak, a queen bee can lay up to 3,000 eggs a day, thanks to this specialized tool. But here's the wild part. If 2 queen bees cross paths, their ovipositors become dueling daggers. Only one queen can rule the hive, and the stinger becomes the weapon of monarchy. The victor becomes the mother of thousands. The loser perishes in a chemically charged duel. But in rare cases, if a colony loses its queen, suppressed reproductive hormones in workers fade, and their ovaries awaken. These worker bees can then start laying eggs. A phenomenon known as worker policing begins. If any rogue worker lays eggs while a queen is still active, others may attack or kill her to preserve hive order. This complex system is a blend of behavioral psychology, pheromone signaling, and social hierarchy, all coded in scent. Giants versus buzzers, the elephant paradox. You've probably heard the cartoon trope, elephants afraid of mice. Well, that's mostly myth. But here's what is true. Elephants are genuinely terrified of bees. Seems absurd, right? An animal that weighs several tons, with skin like armor, frightened by an insect the size of a paperclip? But science explains the fear with striking clarity. Although bee stingers can't pierce most of an elephant's hide, they can reach the vulnerable zones. Soft tissues like the eyes, inner ears, and trunk lining. A swarm attacking these delicate spots can cause immense pain and disorientation. In the wild, elephants tend to live with minimal threats. They have few natural predators. So when a chaotic cloud of buzzing insects suddenly targets their face and eyes, it triggers sensory overload. This isn't just discomfort, it's full-on panic behavior, observable in accelerated heart rate, flight attempts, and even herd stampedes. Conservationists have taken advantage of this vulnerability. To prevent elephants from raiding farmlands, researchers developed a clever system: beehive fences. By stringing hives along property borders, farmers create a living alarm system. If an elephant disturbs a hive, bees swarm, and the elephants flee. A According to field studies in Kenya and Botswana, this method has an 80% effectiveness rate. But elephants are no fools. Their brains, the largest among land mammals, contain over 250 billion neurons, rivaling even humans in density. That means they're capable of complex pattern recognition. In some cases, just playing the sound of bees worked temporarily. But after a few false alarms, the elephants learned. No buzz, no danger. They adapt, observe, and adjust. That's not just instinct. That's cognitive reasoning. The early signs of problem-solving intelligence in action. Bee venom as medicine? Now here's where things get really unexpected. Despite all we know about the pain, swelling, and death associated with bee stings, there's a community of people willingly signing up to be stung for health. Welcome to apitherapy, the practice of using bee venom as a form of medical treatment. Specifically, it's called bee venom therapy. And yes, it involves deliberate stinging. Some treatments go as far as delivering 20 to 40 stings in a single session. The logic is grounded in immunological science. Melittin, the venom's primary compound, doesn't just cause pain, it also stimulates the release of cortisol-like anti-inflammatory signals. The body responds by sending out immune regulators, which might, under very specific conditions, reduce inflammation systemically. In theory, this could help patients with conditions like multiple sclerosis, arthritis, or chronic pain syndromes. However, research results have been mixed and sometimes downright disappointing. In a 2005 clinical study, MS patients were split into two groups. One received regular bee venom therapy. The other received no treatment. After 24 weeks of tracking fatigue, mobility, and general well-being, the result was clear. No statistically significant difference between the groups. That doesn't stop some wellness circles from embracing it, though. There's a psychological phenomenon at play here, the placebo effect. When people believe they're healing, their body often follows. Neuroscience has shown that even fake treatments can reduce symptoms via dopamine and endorphin release. Still, experts caution that bee venom is a potent allergen. One wrong reaction can lead to anaphylaxis, a full-body immune meltdown that can become fatal in minutes. Not exactly your typical spa day. So while it's fascinating and rooted in ancient medical traditions, bee sting therapy isn't yet a silver bullet. It's a risky road, and one that walks the line between biochemistry and belief. The stinger's true identity. You've heard it called a stinger, but in scientific terms, it's actually an ovipositor, a specialized tubular organ designed for laying eggs. In bees, ants, and many wasps, evolution took that reproductive tool and turned it into a biological syringe, one that delivers venom instead of life. In most female insects, the ovipositor is used to deposit eggs safely into wood, soil, or plant tissue. But in social insects, like bees, it's undergone adaptive modification. Now instead of placing offspring, it serves as a defensive weapon, rigged with venom glands and fine musculature. This transformation is one of nature's most brilliant acts of resource repurposing. For the queen bee, the ovipositor retains its original role. It's smooth, flexible, and not barbed, ideal for laying thousands of eggs every day. At her peak, a queen can deposit up to 3,000 eggs daily, guided by precise muscle contractions and pheromonal cues. But if another queen appears, that ovipositor becomes a blade. When two queens meet in the hive, it's not diplomacy. It's a lethal duel, winner takes all. Only one can reign, and the battle often ends in one queen dead, the other ruling. Reproductive rebellion. In worker bees, all female, the ovipositor no longer serves as a reproductive organ, but as a venomous lance. Under normal hive conditions, their ovaries remain inactive, suppressed by the queen's inhibitory pheromones. These chemical messages signal to workers, your job is protection, not reproduction. But what happens when the queen dies? That chemical suppression stops. Suddenly, the workers' bodies respond, ovaries develop, egg-laying begins. The hive becomes unstable as multiple workers try to reproduce, despite lacking the queen's genetic diversity. This triggers worker policing, a chaotic period where workers destroy each other's eggs and, occasionally, the rogue bees themselves. It's not just conflict, it's evolutionary regulation. Bees are hardwired to preserve hive efficiency, even at the cost of individual ambition. It's a blend of neurochemistry, social order, and reproductive strategy, unique in the insect kingdom. A symphony of survival. By now, you've seen how much more lies beneath the surface of a single sting. It's not just about pain or poison. It's about neurology, molecular signaling, evolutionary biology, and behavioral intelligence. Every sting is a calculated risk, a defense born from sacrifice, a chemical message written in venom. Bees communicate in ways we're only beginning to fully understand, with pheromonal language, vibrational cues, and even electrical fields sensed by tiny hairs on their bodies. They are builders, chemists, navigators, and warriors when necessary. Their lives revolve around a hive structure that functions almost like a single, living brain. Each bee is a neuron in that system, acting independently but serving the whole. So the next time you swat at a bee, take a second to remember. That little creature is wired with centuries of adaptation. It's armed not just with a stinger, but with scientific complexity and biological brilliance. And if it stings you, it's probably not out of rage, but out of duty. Ever been stung and lived to tell the tale? Or do you just have a whole new level of respect for bees now? Either way, you've officially graduated Bee 101. And this time, no gloves or ice needed.